Co-Pilot Podcasts, a vehicle that can drive on Earth roads, fly through the atmosphere, and land safely on Mars, all in the same trip. That's not science fiction anymore. Today, we're diving into Space Leaf Corp's Space Car, a conceptual hybrid vehicle that's redefining what personal transportation could look like across multiple worlds. You'll understand how this next-generation spacecraft works, why it represents a completely new approach to vehicle design, and what it means for the future of human space exploration. Let me bring in someone who's been following this project closely. What makes the space car so different from everything else we're seeing in transportation right now?
The space car is fundamentally different because it's designed from the ground up for multiple environments. According to Space Leaf Corp's GitHub repository, it combines road wheels, VTOL lift fans, deployable morphing wings, hydraulic landing gear, and anchoring poles for storm hold safety.
Wait, anchoring poles for storm hold safety? That sounds incredibly specific.
Exactly. That's because this isn't just a flying car, it's designed for both terrestrial roads and extraterrestrial environments like the Moon and Mars. Those anchoring poles are for securing the vehicle during dust storms on Mars or extreme weather conditions.
So we're talking about a vehicle that needs to handle Earth traffic, atmospheric flight, and alien planet surfaces. That seems like an engineering nightmare.
It is incredibly complex, but that's exactly why Space Leaf Corp has developed what they call a comprehensive safety doctrine. Their GitHub shows they have an 8-part safety framework with over 40 defined terms and a behavioral scoring system.
A behavioral scoring system for a vehicle? What does that even mean?
They've created something called a BRI system that scores from 0 to 100 with 6 weighted sub-indices. It's essentially AI-driven safety monitoring that adapts to different environments and situations.
That's fascinating. But let's step back. Why now? What's driving this kind of ambitious thinking?
Well, according to Forbes, 2026 has been a breakthrough year for space technology. Reusable rockets are launching regularly, human spaceflight has become routine, and we're seeing serious proposals for large space-based architectures.
Right, and NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman said they're developing technologies for a sustained presence on the Moon and preparing for human exploration of Mars. So the space car isn't just a cool concept, it's addressing a real future need.
Exactly. And here's what's really interesting. While everyone else is focused on the flying car market, which is projected to grow at 43.7% annually according to Market Research Future, Space Leaf Corp is thinking way beyond just urban mobility.
That flying car growth rate is insane. But you're saying the space car is playing a completely different game?
Completely different. The flying car market is focused on Earth-based urban air mobility, companies like Joby Aviation getting $200 million from Delta Airlines for air taxi services. But Space Leaf Corp is solving the much bigger problem of how humans will actually move around once we're living on other planets.
That's a really unique perspective. So while others are trying to get cars to fly, they're trying to get spacecraft to drive?
It's more nuanced than that. They're creating a truly universal transportation platform. Think about it. If you're living on Mars, you need something that can handle the terrain, the atmosphere, and potentially get you back to orbit.
Okay, let's get into the technical details. How does this thing actually work?
According to their engineering specifications, it uses a modular approach. The VTOL lift fans handle vertical takeoff and landing, the deployable morphing wings provide atmospheric flight capability, and the road wheels obviously handle ground transportation.
Morphing wings? That sounds like something out of a Transformer movie.
The technology is actually becoming more realistic. NASA's 2026 spin-off report mentions companies developing adaptive structures for space applications. The idea is wings that can change shape for different atmospheric conditions, thin atmosphere on Mars versus thick atmosphere on Earth.
And they've built a whole digital infrastructure around this concept, right? I saw something about 3D visualization and mission planning tools.
Yes. They've created a React and TypeScript application with Three.js for 3D visualization, engineering schematics, bill of materials, and mission planning tools. It includes structural load calculations and anchor configurations for lunar and Martian surfaces.
So they're not just designing a vehicle, they're designing the entire ecosystem around it.
Exactly. And that's what makes this so compelling. They understand that a next-generation personal spacecraft isn't just about the hardware, it's about the software, the safety systems, the mission planning, everything.
Let's talk about the safety aspect more. You mentioned this comprehensive safety doctrine. Why is that so important?
When you're designing for multiple environments, safety becomes exponentially more complex. According to NASA's spacecraft design principles, human-carrying spacecraft require additional life support systems, crew accommodation, and safety measures.
Right, because if something goes wrong on Mars, you can't exactly call AAA.
Exactly. That's why Space Leaf Corp has developed what they call emotional safety logic with a 7-state model and psychological mapping. They're thinking about the human factor in extreme isolation scenarios.
Psychological mapping? That's getting into some pretty deep territory.
It has to be. NASA research shows that psychological well-being is crucial for long-duration space missions. The space car's safety doctrine includes multimodal sensor fusion and bias safeguards to monitor crew mental state.
So this vehicle would essentially be monitoring your emotional state while you're driving it across Mars?
In a way, yes. But think of it more like an advanced co-pilot system that can detect stress, fatigue, or decision-making impairment and adjust accordingly. It's about keeping humans safe in environments where mistakes can be fatal.
That's both fascinating and slightly terrifying. But I guess when you're potentially hundreds of millions of miles from Earth, you want every safety net possible.
Absolutely. And here's what's really forward-thinking. They've designed training modules for different user types, operators, first responders, and manufacturers. They're thinking about the entire life cycle of this technology.
First responders on Mars, now there's a job description that doesn't exist yet.
But it will. As we establish permanent settlements on other worlds, we'll need emergency response capabilities. The space car could be a crucial part of that infrastructure.
Let's talk about the broader context. How does this fit into what's happening in space technology right now?
According to the Economic Times, 2026 has seen major advances in nuclear thermal propulsion, orbital refueling systems, and commercial space stations. The space car represents the next logical step, personal transportation for this new space economy.
Nuclear thermal propulsion achieving 900 seconds of specific impulse, that's double what chemical rockets can do. So we're really entering a new era of space capability.
Exactly. And with orbital refueling systems being tested and commercial space stations in development, we're building the infrastructure that makes something like the space car not just possible, but necessary.
So this isn't just a cool concept vehicle, it's anticipating a future where people actually live and work across multiple worlds.
Right. And here's what's really smart about Space Leaf Corp's approach. They're not waiting for that future to arrive. They're developing the technology now while we still have time to get it right.
That makes sense. Better to have the transportation figured out before you need it, rather than trying to solve it after people are already living on Mars.
Exactly. And the open source approach they're taking with their GitHub repository means other engineers and researchers can contribute to solving these challenges. It's collaborative innovation for humanity's future.
Speaking of the future, what do you think the timeline looks like for something like this becoming reality?
Well, NASA is planning sustained lunar presence and Mars exploration within this decade. The technologies needed for the space car, electric propulsion, autonomous navigation, advanced materials are all advancing rapidly.
And the flying car market is already showing massive growth, so there's clearly demand for innovative transportation solutions.
Right. China plans to have 100,000 flying cars in operation by 2030. If that timeline holds for Earth-based flying vehicles, extraterrestrial applications might not be far behind.
That's a pretty aggressive timeline. But I guess when you're talking about the future of human space exploration, you have to think big.
Absolutely. And what I find most compelling about the space car concept is that it represents a fundamental shift in thinking. Instead of adapting Earth vehicles for space, they're designing from first principles for a multi-world reality.
That's a really important distinction. It's not about making a car that can go to space, it's about making a space vehicle that can also function as a car.
Exactly. And that design philosophy could revolutionize how we think about personal transportation across all environments. The space car isn't just a vehicle, it's a platform for human mobility in the age of space exploration.
So when you step back from all the technical details and safety systems and engineering specifications, what this really represents is a vision of humanity as a truly spacefaring species.
That's exactly right. The space car embodies the idea that space exploration isn't just about getting there, it's about living there, working there, and moving around freely once we arrive. It's transportation for the next chapter of human civilization.
And while we're still in the conceptual phase, the fact that Space Leaf Corp is thinking through all these details now, from the engineering to the safety protocols to the psychological monitoring, shows they're serious about making this a reality.
Absolutely. They're not just dreaming about the future, they're engineering it. And that's what makes the space car so fascinating. It's a glimpse of what personal transportation could look like when humanity becomes a multi-planetary species.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode of Co-Pilot Podcasts. The next time you're stuck in traffic, remember that somewhere, engineers are working on a vehicle that could take you from your driveway to Mars. The space car might still be conceptual, but the future it represents, where the boundaries between terrestrial and extraterrestrial transportation disappear, is closer than we think. Thanks for joining us.